Hey, what's up everyone? So we have the Stihl BR600 here, and the owner says that they took it to a much closer mechanic and anyway, had some work being done, didn't use it for quite a while, and now when they went to use it, it's now leaking. They decided to bring it to me and see what's going on, so let's see what could be causing this machine to leak. A very common place to leak is at the primer bulb. I don't really see anything though. Tank does have fuel in it. Not a whole lot, but fuel. So we are going to take off this cover and probably that cover. But that's going to require us to take off the recoil. There's 3 screws. And then this has 2 screws. And then this one has 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll have full access to everything. But before we do that, we do need to disconnect the spark plug because we can't pull the cover off with it connected. At least not very easily. That'll make it a lot easier. So I'm going to do that because that's boring to watch. Now, whoever put this back together forgot like 3 screws. So luckily I do have some more, so I'll put those on. But let us see where we could be leaking from. It's most likely from the carburetor, because that's where the fuel is. I'm not really seeing any leaking anywhere. I definitely smell gas. Sometimes the fuel line isn't on all the way, and that's a definite concern. Fuel filter is kind of barely touching the fuel. Let's add a little bit more to it and see, because maybe we're just not getting very good fuel pressure here. Right now, not really seeing a whole lot. Unless maybe it's the carb itself that's the problem. And in my experience with Stihl carbs like this, if your needle and seat aren't playing nice, don't even bother to try to fix it. Just replace it. You'll just be walking down an avenue of just constant issues. Just don't do it. It's kind of weird. It's like it's not getting enough fuel. Maybe there's something wrong on the other side. I just can't see it. There's a screw that was missing there too. I'm not going to lie and say I've never forgotten a screw before in my life, but 3 of them? That's getting a little much. Let me get those screws up. And let's see here. Something just crushed. Let's disconnect the throttle line. These are definitely new fuel lines, newer at least. I'm just not seeing leaking. Hopefully the tank isn't actually the leaking part of it. Let me do a little searching and I'm going to tell you where I'm going to look. I'm going to look at all the fuel lines. Make sure there's no cracks in them, especially the one that hasn't been replaced. Then we'll look at the primer bulb again, see if the connection is just nasty or also cracked. Because what happens when they use old fuel lines, they won't notice that they accidentally cracked it where it fits into like whatever it's connecting to, and it will leak. Then if all else fails, then I think we have a problem with the carburetor. Maybe it's just leaking. I don't know. I'll take a look. I think I found it. So when I was moving the carb to see what was happening, I move, it's hard to tell, but when I move this fuel line, there's definitely fuel coming out of it. I don't know if it's cracked or what, but the new fuel line appears to be the problem. So I'm going to, let's see here. We need to remove some of the lines here so you can kind of gain access to it. So let's see what we need to remove here. We're definitely going to want to remove this. Okay, that was nothing, just debris. Okay, and where is the new fuel? It just goes directly to the tank. Perfect. So let's do that. That way when we take this off, it doesn't spray us. More likely than not, there is a lot of fuel line left over in the bottom there. So maybe we could just cut the bad part off and just put the good part back on. Oh yeah, it's definitely cracked. Take a pair of clippers, clip off the bad part, and give ourselves a little bit of slack here. There we go. Let's put this back on the carburetor. I don't know why that would have happened, but it did. Now, let us shut the fuel tank again. Definitely feels a lot better. And I've been letting it sit there for a while and dangle and move it, and everything appears to be fine. So I don't know if what happened is the line got pinched or what, but you know what does kind of seem more likely is this carburetor doesn't really seem, I don't want to say legit, but OEM. So I'm thinking fuel line got cut by this like little pathway because the barb isn't necessarily correct. I mean, it's not, I guess, wrong. I mean, that's where it should be. It's not angled correctly. And, if we can do anything about that, maybe take a pair of pliers and gingerly bend it. If not, then I do have another carb here, I believe. No, I think that's a different carb. Well, I'm sure there's one here somewhere. Okay, so we need to bend it more this way. That's not really wanting to do a whole lot of bending. Nope, just broke. Have to love Chinese quality. Okay, well, I'm gonna look for a new one, and if I can't find it, I'll have to order one. So I found a new one. This one has a much more pronounced angle on it, so that's good. The problem is, it has this tiny little barb here. This one has a substantially bigger, and it's the same design, but not really. So I think what we will have to do is, I would be very surprised if this line would even fit on that. We might have to put a new line on it. Yeah, no. What's that saying about hot dogs in hallways? Oh, that wasn't even on there very well either. Man, this new fuel line was just not good at all. I'm going to get a much thinner inner diameter one, and then hopefully that should work. There we go. That should be a lot better. We do, however, need to generally get the same size and length of line here. So the easiest way that I know is just to kind of measure with the old one. And then you give yourself a little bit extra, not a whole lot. Especially if you're going to be cutting in an angle to put it into like one of those little holes for a fuel tank. Could definitely be a benefit to give yourself a little extra, because you're already going to be cutting part of it off. For this type of thing, I clean the end of my needle nose here, and I'm going to shove it on as much as I can. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, because the barb on the end of the primer bulb is a lot bigger. Did that rip it? No, I didn't. You can also get it warm. You can also take it out. Kind of give ourselves a little bit more working room. Not a whole lot though. I could totally understand why the person that did this before only replaced some of the line. This other line looks very decent, so. And I also agree with, I like to have clear line, just for, that's my own personal preference, but you don't need it, of course. I'm just hoping that this isn't too thin, but suppose we'll find out. I don't think it will be, though. I mean, it is just the return. We might need to trim it a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to get that trimmed, and then we'll put it back together. There we go. Now, let's see how that fits. Is it going to be a problem for us? It does not look like it. It looks like it's a much better aftermarket carb than the other one was. So that's good news. That's real good news. Aftermarket carbs are great and horrible at the same time, because they appear to be fine, and then all of a sudden you install it and weird stuff happens like this, where, or maybe like right here isn't drilled through all the way, or you have a different type of throttle cable, or you know, crap like that. There we are. Now we need to put this in. I actually think I put this in. I put this in a while back because there was a problem with the tube. The reason why the owner didn't bring it to me immediately is his house is, I'm trying to remember how far he told me, but it is a good 45 minutes to an hour away. And he doesn't have a whole lot of customers in this area. And one of his customers he does have, though, that does a lot of projects for him, I work with a lot. So that's why he found, or how he found me, not why. There we go. Now, let's put the screws back in, and then we'll check and see if we see any more leaking. Now, Stihls, you never want to tighten it up until you know both screws are going. Otherwise, you'll never get the second one in. Okay. So we potentially had a leak at the primer bulb. We no longer, that's for sure. That's definitely a lot better. I already feel so much better. It sounds better. Before it kind of sounded like it was getting a lot of air. Perfect. Okay. So I think it's time to get the cover back on, and then we'll test it out. Full disclosure, I couldn't find enough screws. I found the one that was missing down there. I put that one in my little stash, and I also found another one. And Stihl made this cover. They made it super easy to work on, of course. So I'm gonna put on the everything, and we'll be back. There we go. Have everything put on. Like I said, still missing one screw, but it's the way it has to be. I mean, it's more than 3. So I most likely am going to have to tune this. So I have a hexagon tuning bit driver. Let's see. Now the story, in fact, I should probably get this cleaned up while I tell you the story. The story behind this was, this would leak pretty badly about 30 seconds into it running, which would make sense. To the point where when the owner brought it to me, he got it started and then he let it run, and I want to say like 10 seconds later, there was a steady stream of fuel when you picked it up. So yeah, it's just how it is. Let's see if that fixed anything. So obviously it's running pretty high in the idle, but it's not leaking. So we have fixed at least that problem. I'm going to be looking at, fixing the idle and tuning it up. I'm not going to make a video on that one though. I've had plenty. Check those out. But if your blower is leaking, first place I'd check is the primer bulb. If the primer bulb is in good condition, then check all the fuel lines. If all the fuel lines are in good condition, then right here on the carb is a pretty good place to start looking, or on top either one really. And if it's leaking from there, your gasket's broken. If you see fuel dumping out of the center of the carb, then that means your needle isn't playing nice, and you either need to get a new diaphragm for it, or you just need to buy a new carb, or your needle has like junk in it. Like I said though, if it is a needle and seat problem, you'll always be chasing problems all the time. It's just not worth it. Buy a new carb like we did here. So other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and get this running appropriately, and we should be good to go. If I see another puddle, I'll bring you back, but as of right now, the tank has been closed, it's fully primed, it ran, and there's not a single drop. I guess we'll take a look at it one last time. Yep, still nothing. So I think we're pretty good. We found the fuel line was busted, as well as not really connected that great on the primer bulb. So whichever one it was, I don't really know, probably both. Yeah, so I'm going to leave you at that. Cautionary note, if you are buying an aftermarket carb, make sure the fuel inlet is not rubbing against the housing, because that was definitely a cause of the problem, one of the problems. So get a good aftermarket one if you are, and if it is getting a little tight in there, send it back and get a different one, buy a different brand. Don't go having this issue again, because you'll just have to take it apart again. Have a good night and see you later. If this helped you out at all, put a thumbs up, because that helps me out a lot. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'll be happy to help. And don't forget to subscribe. Catch you in the next video. You have a good night.